Salam and peace be upon you, my dear listener. My name is Mohammed Layiq Sediqi, the father of Holophase. Remember the language we're learning together. There is one field called phi, spelled Phi. Phi is the holophase, a cyclic rhythm defined at every point in the universe. Its first derivatives give three simultaneous echoes: time, which we call omega, spelled Omega, space, which we call k, and motion, which we call v, built from both omega and k. Above them, higher derivatives form a branching tree that, in principle, goes on forever. Every law of nature is a pattern in this tree of derivatives of phi. Today, we zoom into just one branch of that tree. In part 18, we did something beautiful and strange. We discovered that reality can tie knots in the phase field. We walked around invisible centers, counted how many times phi turned as we went in a loop, and met winding numbers, integer counts that cannot be changed by gentle deformations. We met the defect set, sigma, the skeleton of places where the phase code cannot be made perfectly smooth. Around sigma, we saw that phi can wind like a vortex in water or a knot in a rope, giving rise to particle-like, charge-like behavior. Today, in part 19, we shift from knots to messages. If part 18 was about where the phase fabric is knotted, part 19 is about how patterns travel through that fabric. We are going to talk about waves, but not in an abstract, heavy way. We will talk about waves in the simplest possible language, as moving messages in the holophase code. We will meet three key ideas. 1. Wave patterns as moving sentences in phi. 2. Two different speeds in a wave. One for the neat repeating pattern, phase speed, and one for the actual message carried by a group of waves, group speed. 3. Dispersion as grammar. Each medium has rules that say which patterns are allowed and how fast they travel. We will do this slowly, with stories and everyday examples, so that you can feel these ideas in your body, not just hear their names. 1. Waves as moving messages. Let's begin with something you already know very well: the wave in a football stadium. You've seen it. One person stands up with their arms raised, then the next row, then the next, and a ring of standing people travels around the stadium. If you watch from far above, it looks like a smooth band of motion circling the seats. But what is really moving? The people are not running around the stadium. Each person just stands up and sits down in place. What moves is the pattern of standing and sitting, the shape of the activity. This is our first important insight. A wave is not stuff moving. A wave is a pattern that moves through stuff. In the stadium, the stuff is people. The moving pattern is standing, then sitting, moving around. Now imagine the same thing with water. You throw a small stone into a calm pond. You see circular ripples spreading outward. If you put a leaf on the surface, it mostly goes up and down. It does not ride all the way to the edge of the pond. Once again, what moves is the pattern of high and low water, not the individual water molecules traveling across the pond. In sound, the stuff is air. When you speak, the molecules of air just vibrate back and forth a tiny bit. They are not flying like bullets from your mouth to someone's ear. What travels is a repeating pattern of compression and rarefaction. Squeezed there, relaxed there. Squeezed, relaxed. Like the stadium wave, but now in the air. So a wave is a traveling yes-no, high-low, up-down pattern. In the holophase language, those repeating patterns are not yes-no. They are repeating patterns in the phase field phi. You can imagine the local value of phi, the internal rhythm at each point, as a little hand on a clock. In a wave, that clock hand varies smoothly in space and in time in a repeating way. Crest, trough, again and again. You don't need to see the symbol phi on a screen. Just remember this. Every familiar wave you know, water waves, sound waves, light waves, can be seen as a pattern in the underlying phase, a rhythmic phrase in the holophase code. And like any phrase in a language, waves have structure, rhythm, and rules. 2. The rhythm and the spacing. omega and k in plain words. Let's connect this directly to the holophase alphabet we have been building. We already met omega, spelled O-M-E-G-A. The temporal cadence, how fast phi is turning in time at each point. You can think of it as the local ticking rate of reality's internal clock. K, the spatial pattern, how quickly phi changes across space. Big K means the phase pattern changes very rapidly as you move along. Small k means it changes gently and slowly. In a simple wave, these two join forces. The phase pattern repeats in space with some regular spacing between crests. That spacing is related to k. The phase pattern repeats in time with some regular rhythm, like a musical beat. That rhythm is related to omega. A very simple way to say it is k tells you how close the crests are to each other. Omega tells you how fast the crests are ticking through time. You can feel both in a guitar string. Pluck one string gently. You hear a note. That note has a certain pitch, how high or low it sounds. The pitch is related to how fast the vibration repeats in time, so to omega. Now look at the string. You may see a blur in the middle. If you could freeze it with a strobe light, you would see certain positions where it moves a lot and certain positions where it hardly moves. That spatial pattern, nodes and antinodes, is linked to k. So a simple steady wave is like a phrase in the phi language with a clear tempo, omega, and a clear spacing, k. That pair, how fast it repeats in time and how quickly it changes in space, is its basic signature. 3. Phase velocity, how fast the pattern moves. Now we ask, if the wave pattern is a moving phrase, how fast does that phrase travel? Let's go back to the stadium wave. When you watch the wave from far away, you may say, look, the wave is traveling at this speed around the stadium. What you mean is, you pick one ring of people standing up. You watch how long it takes that crest to travel from one section to another. You divide the distance by the time. That gives you a speed. In waves, that speed of the neat repeating pattern of crests and troughs is called the phase velocity. To make it friendly to audio listeners, let's call it the pattern speed. Pattern speed answers the question, if I paint one crest of the wave red, how fast does that red crest move through space? In water waves, you can watch a single crest traveling across the surface. In sound, you can't see the crest, but mathematically, you can still talk about how fast the peaks of pressure move. In light, you can talk about the peaks of the electric and magnetic field. In the holophase code, the pattern speed is one way of reading the relationship between omega and k. It is like asking, given this temporal rhythm and this spatial spacing, how fast does the repeating pattern of phi move? But here is the subtlety, and this is where many physics students first get confused. The pattern speed is not always the speed at which messages or energy or information travel. To feel this difference, we need another everyday story. 4. Group velocity, how fast the message moves. Imagine again the stadium. This time, people don't keep the wave going all the way around. Instead, one short wave packet moves. Maybe only 20 people stand up in sequence, then sit, and then nothing follows. You see a small group of activity moving around, like a little traveling island of excitement on a calm sea of seated fans. Now you have two speeds. 1. The speed at which each crest in that group moves, the pattern speed. 2. The speed at which the whole little group moves, the group speed. If the wave is simple, these two speeds might be the same. But they do not have to be. It is possible to arrange things so that the crests move one way inside the group, while the group moves slightly differently. Or even in some exotic materials, so that the pattern seems to move faster than the group carrying the message. In physics, the speed of the group, the speed at which the envelope of the wave packet moves, is usually the one that matters for messages, energy, and signals. We call it the group velocity, but here we will call it the message speed. So, pattern speed, phase velocity, how fast individual crests move. Message speed, group velocity, how fast the packet, the lump, the word made out of many crests moves. Now, Let's make this even more concrete with water. You drop a stone into a pond. Near the stone, the ripples are sharp and small. As they travel outward, they spread and change. If you film the surface in slow motion and track a single sharp crest, it might move at one speed, while the broader region where the ripples are strong, the main ring, moves at a slightly different speed. The ring, the region carrying most of the energy, is like the moving word. The individual crests inside that ring are like the letters dancing. In the Holophase language, this becomes rich. A wave packet is like a small phrase composed of many nearby letters in K-space, many nearby spatial rhythms. Their combined interference creates a group, a packet in space and time. The speed at which that packet moves depends on how omega changes when you slightly adjust K. In other words, on the rules that tie time rhythm and spatial pattern together. You don't need the formal derivative here. Just hold on to this. The universe can allow patterns where the decorative wiggle travels at one speed, but the actual message, the lump of activity, travels at another. From a language perspective, it is beautiful. It is like watching a scrolling line of text on a screen. The individual letters may shimmer or flicker in place at one rate, but the word itself moves steadily from left to right. Pattern speed is how the letters dance. Message speed is how the sentence itself travels. 5. Dispersion, when different notes travel differently. Now we come to the next key idea, dispersion. To keep it very simple, dispersion means different kinds of waves in the same medium can travel at different speeds. Here, kinds of waves usually means waves with different spatial spacing between crests, different k, or different repetition rates in time, different omega. A classic, very intuitive example is water again. On deep water, long, smooth swells travel faster than short, choppy ripples. On shallow water, the behavior changes. There can be a depth-dependent rule. So if you make a wave pattern that contains both long and short ripples together, they will naturally separate as they travel. The long parts will pull ahead. The short parts will lag behind. The wave dispersion is telling you, this medium does not treat all patterns equally. It has preferences. Think of an orchestra playing softly and then loudly. The air does not care much. High notes and low notes travel almost at the same speed. That is why you can listen to music across a hall without the melody being torn apart. But in water, the medium does care. The music of waves gets stretched. A short splash near the shore can become a long, smooth swell further out. In the Holophase language, dispersion is encoded in something called a dispersion relation. In simple words, this is just a rule that links omega, the time rhythm, and k, the spatial pattern, in a given medium. For each allowed k, the medium chooses a corresponding omega. It is like a grammar rule in a language. In this medium, if you want to write this kind of spatial pattern, you must match it with this kind of temporal rhythm. Different media have different grammar. A guitar string has one dispersion rule. A water surface has another. Light in a vacuum has a very special one. Light inside glass has yet another. You can actually measure these rules, send in waves with different spacing, see what the repetition rate is, and map out the relation between omega and k. That is falsifiable. You can test it in a lab, not just imagine it. From a linguistic point of view, the dispersion relation is the part of the Holophase code that says, these are the legal wave syllables in this material, and this is how fast each syllable sings. 6. How dispersion shapes messages. Now let's combine dispersion with the idea of a wave packet, the little moving word built from many nearby wave patterns. Suppose you create a packet by combining several wave components with slightly different spacing between crests. Each of those components has its own pattern speed, according to the dispersion rule. If the medium is non-dispersive, no dispersion, all components travel at the same speed. The packet keeps its shape while it moves. The message is clean. Dispersive. Different components travel at different speeds. The packet stretches, smears, or even breaks apart as it moves. The message can get distorted. Again, an analogy makes this very clear. Imagine you send a group text message to several friends, and you ask them each to re-forward it to someone else. Suppose one friend always forwards messages instantly. One waits 1 minute, one waits 10 minutes. After a while, different parts of your social network receive the same message at very different times. The message is stretched out in time by the differing speeds of your friends. Dispersion does something similar in space. Different contributors to a wave packet, the different K components, move at different speeds. The combined packet becomes smeared. Now, why is this important for a deep, falsifiable view of reality? Because information and signals live in these packets. When we send a radio signal, a fiber optic pulse, or a sound, we are always sending shapes in time and space, not infinite, pure, perfect waves. We are sending lumps, words, pulses. The group velocity, the message speed, depends directly on the dispersion rule. If you change the medium, or if the medium changes its state, the group velocity changes. You can measure that. You can test whether the holophase description of dispersion correctly predicts how fast messages will move. In the holophase program, this means something profound. The ability of the universe to carry messages, to transfer information and energy, is not a separate ingredient. It is encoded in the same phase language we have been learning, through the way omega and k are tied together in each context. The holophase language tree does not just tell you what patterns exist, it tells you how those patterns move and which of them can carry clean messages. 7. Everyday examples: light, sound, and color as phi messages. Let's walk through 3 simple everyday examples and read them in holophase language. 7.1. Sound in air. When you speak, you create waves of compressed and rarefied air. In everyday air, for most frequencies we use in speech, dispersion is very small. High and low notes travel almost the same speed. That is why a spoken sentence does not arrive scrambled. The packet of sound, the word, keeps its shape as it reaches your friend's ear. In holophase terms, the dispersion relation linking omega and k for sound in air is nearly non-dispersive over that range. The group velocity, message speed, and phase velocity, pattern speed, are nearly the same. That is a testable statement. You can measure sound speed at different frequencies and see how little it changes. 7.2. Water waves on a beach. Now think of standing at the shore. Far out, you see long, smooth swells rolling in. Closer to shore, they steepen, slow down, and sometimes break. Here, dispersion is strong. In deep water, long waves move faster than short ones. As the water gets shallow, the rule changes. The bottom starts to matter. If you create a packet of ripples with mixed scales, the packet will spread. The longer components will outrun the shorter ones. The message you sent at one point in the sea will arrive at the shore as a stretched, distorted version. In the holophase code, the water plus gravity plus depth define a particular dispersion grammar. The holophase field phi in that system is not free to write any wave it wants. It must obey this grammar. You can falsify this description by carefully measuring how a created wave group evolves and comparing it to the predicted packet evolution from the dispersion relation. Oceanographers and lab physicists do this. 7.3. Light and color in glass. Now look at a simple prism splitting white light into colors. White light is not pure. It is a packet composed of many light waves with different frequencies, different omegas, and corresponding k's. In vacuum, light of all colors travels at the same speed. The dispersion is simple, and the packet stays together. In glass, the dispersion rule is different. Red, green, and blue can have slightly different pattern speeds. As a result, when white light passes through the prism, different colors bend differently. The packet gets separated into its components. The way glass ties omega and k together for light is visible directly as the splitting of colors. Again, this is completely testable. You can measure the angle of refraction for each color, deduce the dispersion relation, and match it to your holophase description of how phi behaves in that medium. 8. Holophase view. Waves as sentences constrained by grammar. Let's now step back and see all of this as language. In the holophase picture, the underlying alphabet are the basic derivatives of phi: omega, k, the combined change d phi, motion v, and higher ones. A simple wave is like a very regular periodic word made from this alphabet. Da, 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 repeated. A wave packet is like a short phrase, a cluster of syllables that begins, grows, and ends. The dispersion relation is like the grammar book. It tells you which syllables are allowed in which medium and how they sound when spoken. Phase velocity is like how fast the letters themselves scroll. Group velocity is like how fast the actual phrase moves across the screen. Topology from Part 18 told us about the nouns of this language: knots, charges, stable defects. Waves and dispersion tell us about the verbs, how things move, how influence travels, how one region of phi can affect another. And falsifiability is always near. You can measure pattern speed. You can measure message speed. You can measure how different patterns separate in a medium. You can map out the dispersion rule and compare it to the Holophase prediction. If the Holophase model is right, these measured grammars, these dispersion relations, are nothing but different branches of the same master tree of derivatives of phi. Each medium corresponds to a different way that the phase field is constrained or coupled. Each one writes a different subset of possible sentences. 9. You as a listener inside the wave. Before we close this part, I want to bring you right into the center of the picture. Right now, as you hear my voice, your eardrum is moving because of sound waves in the air. These waves are patterns of compression and rarefaction, traveling at a message speed determined by the dispersion in air, carrying a packet shaped by the rise and fall of my voice. But more deeply, in the holophase view, they are local ripples in the underlying phase field phi, with a particular omega pattern in time and a k pattern in space, obeying a dispersion grammar that air has written into the holophase code. Those packets reach your ear, vibrate tiny bones, send electrical signals into your brain. Inside your brain, more waves appear. Electrical waves, chemical pulses, patterns of firing. These too have their own dispersion relations, their own effective omegas and k's in the complex tissue of the nervous system. You are, quite literally, a reader of waves. Your entire sensory life is built from wave packets arriving, being decoded, and triggering other wave-like patterns inside you. Part 19 is telling you, this is not a random coincidence. In the holophase universe, the language of waves is not an add-on. It is built into the very alphabet of reality. Messages, signals, information, all of them are written as structured wave patterns in phi, shaped and constrained by dispersion, carried at the group velocity, and filtered by your own internal phase grammar. 10. Looking ahead. In the master tree of the holophase language, we have now climbed several crucial branches. From phi itself, the silent root, to its first derivatives, omega, k, d phi, and v, to second-order accents, curvature, focusing, and convergence, to topology, knots and defects in sigma, and now to waves and messages, dispersion, pattern speed, and message speed. In the next part, we will go one level deeper into how the universe judges different patterns, how it seems to favor some over others, how certain wave configurations correspond to higher activity or intensity. We will meet simple combinations of our alphabet, like omega squared and the magnitude of k squared, which act like energy-like measures in this language. But for now, I would like you to carry a few simple images with you. The stadium wave, people almost still, pattern moving. The stone in the pond, crests traveling, leaf bobbing. The prism, white packet splitting into colored components. The message, a wave packet as a moving word, shaped by the grammar of dispersion. All of them are different ways of saying the same thing. Reality speaks in waves, and those waves are sentences in the holophase language. You, as a listener, are not outside this story. You are one of the most complex readers and writers of this wave language that the universe has produced so far. Every heartbeat, every brain rhythm, every step you take is both a physical act and a line written in the code of phi. In part 19, we have simply shone a light on one corner of that code, how waves carry messages, how pattern speed and message speed can differ, and how dispersion acts as a hidden grammar rule behind every wave you have ever seen, heard, or felt. Peace be upon you.